On deck, the Let's Get Two interview.
So we are super excited to welcome to Let's Get To Hannah Huesman. She serves as the mental skills coach for the Philadelphia Phillies. She earned a Master of Science degree in sports psychology and motor behavior from the University of Tennessee. Go Volunteers, focusing on improving performance amongst athletes of all different ages. She's a certified mental performance coach. She's also a former two-sport division athlete in both basketball and softball. Hannah, thanks so much for jumping on the Let's Get To.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
And we have baseball back. How cool is that?
Yes, we do. It's amazing.
I watched I sort of went into this because I'm as you could tell, an Astros fan. So it's a little weird for us right now. But I kind of went in going, I'm just going to watch a few games and ended up watching all four. It was nuts.
Yeah. I know. It's so exciting. It feels like a small piece of normalcy is kind of getting back into place. Like now that baseball's back, the world can go back to normal.
I agree. And I think by the end of the season, it'll be just like it was. Tell me a little bit about you, though. How did you get into baseball in the first place and then also working as a mental skills coach?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with how I became a mental skills coach because then it kind of trickles into how I got into the world of baseball. But so I was, like you said, I was a student athlete my whole life. So I kind of always knew I wanted to stay in sports. I just didn't really know to what capacity. And so I thought I was going to be a coach for a really long time. I actually went to school. My undergrad was in exercise science. I thought I was going to be a strength and conditioning coach for a long time. And just started exploring options and realized none of them are really like lighting my soul on fire, basically. And I've always been really passionate about wanting to do something that I love day in and day out. And it was actually my senior year of college. I took an elective class in sports psychology, last semester, wasn't thinking anything of it. And I was like, what the heck is this? Why have we never heard about it? And how can I learn everything about this subject? And selfishly was mad I didn't get to have that during my career. We had a few series left and that was it. And I was like, how come I didn't hear about this my freshman year?
Yeah.
And so that's what led me to UT to explore more. And I got my master's in sports psych and motor behavior, which is really cool because it was like taking my undergrad, knowing the body, and then adding the mind into it. So figuring out how the mind and the body work together to produce optimal performance, which is what I do. And so I actually graduated from there and applied for my first internship after grad school. I did a couple during grad school, but after grad school was with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I ended up landing that job. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door with baseball. And then from there, I went and worked in New York City for a private practice for about a year and a half. And then from there, I was like, dang, I miss baseball. I miss being a part of a team and something bigger than me, and started looking for baseball opportunities and had an opportunity with the Phillies. And this is my fourth year with them. So that's kind of my background.
And we have a lot of Philly fans that listen to the show, and I think they're hoping you've worked with the bullpen. But I think they're going to be better this year.
Yeah, there's been some changes. I think Philly fans are already really excited.
I think they should be. And I think, I think right now everybody just about should be excited. But yeah, I think they really should be. Yogi Berra said baseball's 90% mental. Is that true?
I guess it depends on who you ask, but I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
Because I just, you work so hard physically for your mind to fail you, and it's like, how are we working on our mind, right? What are we doing to make sure just as hard as we're working physically, we're working that hard mentally and we're not neglecting that. And I think it sometimes appears that it's 90% of the game because when your mind fails you, it's really hard to combat that. When your body fails you, there may be ways around it a little bit here and there. But when your mind fails you, it's really hard to overcome that. You have to have the skills and the routines and the knowledge of how to overcome that. And so even if it's not literally 90%, it may affect 90% of your game if your mind isn't where it needs to be. Theoretically, any sport, right? Any performance, like there's always a physical component, but there's also a huge mental component. And I think it's the one we tend to neglect. And so that's why I think it can feel like 90% sometimes.
Are we still, it's weird because I asked this question coming from not just a guy who does a baseball show because he loves it, but I'm also a military veteran with combat experience. Mm-hmm. And so I've dealt with that stuff as well. Are we still at a spot where, is there a stigma to admit that I need some help with my mental health, or are we getting past that?
Great question. I think there's a little of both. And I think it's something that we fight constantly on a daily basis, and like first and foremost, there's a difference between mental performance and mental health. So mental health is your, clinical anxiety, depression, eating disorders, OCD, ADD, all that stuff, even suicidality, right? Mental performance is motivation, composure, concentration, focus, resiliency, even enjoyment, right? So I think the stigma of mental health in general is still there. I think it's gotten significantly better because you've had pro athletes and famous people, really setting that platform on social media to accept mental health and to really make it a part of your performance and of your daily life and like accepting that that's what's going on with you. And I still think we have to fight that a little bit in the mental performance world too. It's like, the running joke is you only go talk to the mental performance coach when everything's going wrong, right? And the reality of it is, like, I view mental performance as proactive and not reactive. Right. Because if you wait for to hit the fan, it's almost too late. You don't have a skill to pull out of your back pocket.
Yeah.
But if we can talk about failures or setbacks, or even when you're performing really well and your confidence is really high, how do you respond to that? Then when you're in that situation, you already have the tools that you need. One of my favorite analogies is, way back when you talk about the dentist, right? People only went to the dentist when their teeth were falling out, right? And now somebody had the brilliant idea to go 2 times a year, every 6 months to get cleanings before they started falling out. And that's kind of like how I view mental performance is like, you guys know we don't have to wait till we're like failing or in a slump or whatever it is, on the verge of like getting released or quitting or being done with our career. We can work on this early to elongate that career and keep you here and healthy and performing at your best before we even have to deal with those things. So, but we are constantly working on it just because it's been like that for so long and looked down upon, it's just like, figure it out, be mentally tough. Right. And now we have people in place to actually teach that and to educate them and coach them on that. So I think it's always going to be there. But I think it's gotten a whole heck of a lot better. And I know here we really pride ourselves in making it a part of the culture. And it's not something you do at the end of the day, or it's not something you just go talk to them when you're struggling. Like sometimes guys are doing great and we want to talk. Why are things going great? Are you creating awareness around things and why they're going great? So, it's super important. And I think it's all in the culture that you create around the importance of mental performance.
It does seem to, I think baseball's different for a lot of reasons, but I think to your point, in a baseball game, you play every day. Mm-hmm. It's hard to fix a thing while the thing is happening every day. It's not football where you have a week off. Mm-hmm. It does seem like being proactive is the key to staying mentally sharp.
Yeah. And I mean, we can't have a tool for every single thing we're going to face, right? We can't predict that. But you can have a solid base of tools in your toolbox that you can use some sort of combination of those tools to at least get you through what you're going through. And then maybe when the off season rolls around is when you can really hit it hard and work on something. But at least you're equipped to manage and get through whatever it is you're going through just then. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
When it comes to baseball, I mean, especially you having experience playing both softball and basketball, so there's a comparison there. Does the individual and team mix of baseball make it more difficult? Like, yes, it's a team game, but it's also one athlete facing another athlete with sort of all eyes on them. Does that add a level of pressure to the process?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, because it's almost like an additional pressure, right? If you're playing a predominantly team sport, it's kind of like, hey, we're all in this together. If we all fail, we all fail. If you're playing an individual sport, you're like, hey, it's all on me. If I fail, I fail. And then baseball is like this unique individual game within a team game. And so now you not only don't want to let yourself down, but you don't want to let your team down. Right. And so I do think it probably is an added stressor. And it's interesting too, because you're trying to be the best you can be, but you're also trying to be the best you can be for the team. Right. So it's just kind of everything's like double fold and there's always two sides to that. But I think it's safe to say it's a little more pressure than maybe a single sport or like a predominantly team sport for sure.
When you're working with an athlete, how much is it one size fits all, or how much is it really learning that athlete and learning what they respond to? I mean, I'm imagining stretching a hamstring is stretching a hamstring, but working with someone's mental sharpness, how much of it is really individualized to the person you're working with? Almost
all of it. I love that question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question. I'm very impressed by that. I think it's all individualized. We talk all the time. There is not a cookie cutter approach on how you become confident or how you handle nerves or what routines work for you in order to be in the best headspace to go perform. It's all individual. And that's the cool part. And one of my favorite parts of the job is getting to know the player first as a human being and then helping them as a player. Because if I don't know who you are as a human being, then it's going to be really hard for me to help you as a player, because who you are as a person 100% affects who you are as a baseball player. And even if you have an alter ego when you go play, like that's still affecting it in some way, shape, or form. So it's definitely getting to know the player. It's a lot of trial and error, figuring out what works for them, what's worked for them in the past may not even work for them right now. Right. And
Right.
So it's challenging. It's like we have multiple ways for a player to build confidence. Right. And it's up to us to figure out, okay, here's what we think will help. Try this and see if it works. Okay. Didn't work. Try this, try that. Or maybe we nail it on the first time, but it's definitely individualized and trying to combine that person and player component of it.
How entrenched is this in the sport of baseball? Like, are you all working with minor leaguers all the way up? Is it a program? Are all teams doing it, or are the Phillies one of the few? It's one of those areas I was very interested to even learn about you, because I've heard about pretty much all level of preparation in baseball, particularly being an Astros fan, from like sort of the nerd rooms of all the guys with the computers. But this seems like something different. Is it something the Phillies are kind of one of the first, or is it something that's replicated through most of the other MLB teams?
Yeah, almost all MLB teams have mental performance coaches. And it ranges from somebody who is kind of contracted out, right? So they may not be full-time with the club, but they may come in and out on occasion, to people having 7 or 8 full-time staff members in their mental performance department. So at the Phillies, we have 5 right now. So, and we're all the way across the board from the Dominican, from our Dominican summer leagues all the way to the big leagues. So, we cover the whole spectrum of minor leagues and major leagues. So I do think baseball is leading professional sports in mental performance. I think basketball is probably leading in mental health, NBA. I know hockey's picking up mental performance. Okay. I know NFL is dabbling in mental performance. I know a couple of coaches who work in the NFL. But I think baseball is really the sport that has truly believed in the value of mental performance coaching and investing in it. And I honestly want to say there's a rule that they have to have some kind of a mental performance coach. I know they have to have a mental health person, which we have a mental health person too. But I think almost every club has to have a mental performance coach too, even if it's just contracted out. But yeah, every team has one. And then it just depends.
Sorry, continue. I'm sorry.
No, it just depends on if it's 1 or if it's 9, you know.
It does seem like baseball would need that the most, because it is the sport where, they talk about it, right? Steady heartbeat the whole time. It's the sport where emotion very rarely plays a role. Like, you can see a basketball player get fired up and take a game over, but in baseball, it's almost like if you try too hard, it doesn't work. It does seem like that would be the edge that really could put a team over the top.
Yeah. And I think also in baseball, you have so much downtime. Like, you have so much time to just think, right? In football, you don't have any time to think. Basketball, you don't have any time to think. It's like read and react constantly. But in baseball, you have in between innings, you have when you're not hitting, you have when you're in the field, right? And there hasn't been a ball hit to you. Like, you get 1 or 2 balls hit to you a game, right? Roughly, right? So there's so much time to, like, we call it like dome up, like get in your own head. And so I think that's why too, because like, say you have an at-bat that you struggled with, or you didn't perform the way you wanted to perform, you're thinking about that at-bat for probably the next hour until you get another at-bat, right? And so it's like, how can you handle that, be on the field, do all of those things, and still be able to perform, like still be able to catch a fly ball or make a play in the infield or whatever it is, even though you just failed epically at the plate, right? And not letting that carry over. So I think there's just a lot of downtime, which is why I think you can get in your head and start to believe those negative thoughts that creep in.
You talked about this being your calling, and you took the class in college. So what is your favorite part of it? Is it working with young minor leaguers? Is it getting to, work with veterans who maybe are open to a new style of thinking? Which part really kind of just makes you go home and feel like you've put in a good day's work?
That's a really good question. I think one of my favorite parts is when guys have this like aha moment where they're like, oh my God, like that thing we talked about, I played really good today because of it, or I've been playing really good, or I changed this, or I did this, or I made this adjustment. It's almost seeing them buy in right in front of your face, because some of them listen and believe in it and go apply it. But when they, when they buy in and they're like, okay, this is actually something I need to make a part of my daily routine. And I'm like, heck yes. Like my job is just beginning in that moment, but mental performance is weird because you can't really force mental performance on anybody, right? If you're not ready to hear mental performance, then like I can't force you to practice mindfulness or force you to set goals or do any of those things. I could, but it could actually do more harm than good. So it's when we've had these conversations, we've set this relationship, we've set the standard, they trust you, they decide to try something that you've talked about, and then they buy in and they come running in the door the next day, or they've talked to somebody and somebody they talked to mentioned something we talked about. And like, there's all different ways that guys buy in, but I think officially seeing them like realize like that light bulb of, wow, this is actually really important. And I know I need to make this a part of my daily routine. Like, to me, that's all I can ask for, is for them to buy into what we're doing. And then they kind of take it from there, and we get to play with things and implement new concepts and all that. But seeing them buy in is definitely a good feeling.
Well, I'm actually super excited that I came across you on Twitter. I've been watching your Mental Health Monday videos when you post them. And it's weird because, you know, in my past life, I was a combat veteran, and yet going to throw out a first pitch and I'm incredibly nervous, but your videos have been helping. So I really, really appreciate it.
I love it. I'm glad you tuned in.
And she is Hannah Huesman. She is one of the mental skills coach for the Philadelphia Phillies. Hannah, thanks so much for jumping on Let's Get To, and good luck this season.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.